Iran has carried out two what it calls True Promise operations. True Promise 1 was in April last year, and True Promise 2, which was on October 1st last year. Those operations were intended to be deterrent. Clearly, that deterrence didn't work. Israel went ahead with this strike, not only bombing military sites, but targeting Iran's most senior military leadership. What do you make of all that?
True Promise 1, I think, was more about intelligence gathering to see what the Israelis, the Americans have as air defense and so on. And it was mostly very cheap drones to draw out their defense capabilities. And True Promise 2, they used serious weapons, but they wanted to test their accuracy. After True Promise 2, the Iranians decided if there's going to be an escalation, that the chances are that the Americans will get involved. And so Iran has to work on the accuracy of their missiles, their drones, but also they have to increase their underground bases, and they have to be prepared for potential American involvement in this conflict. And that is something that the Iranians were doing over the last 6 months. I think the Iranians believe that military conflict would be inevitable, and ultimately the empire, the Americans, the Israelis would attack Iran. Netanyahu needs escalation to survive. That is the reason why I was always saying that the Israeli regime will expand the war in Lebanon, because I believe that Netanyahu needed the war. I don't think it was a victory for the Israelis. I don't think any of this is in the long run good for the Israeli regime. I think they're overstretched. I think they legitimize it themselves, and I think the assault on Tehran just further creates hatred for the regime, despite the attempts of Western governments and Western media to support and justify them. So as the negotiations have been taking place, the Iranians have been beefing up and strengthening their underground assets. They've been increasing the protection for their nuclear program, which is a peaceful program. For the last 30 years, Netanyahu has been saying it's 1 year away, 2 years away, but Western media won't tell you this. They will repeat the narrative in order to justify Netanyahu, just like they did throughout the last 20 months. Just like when they were bombing hospitals, they were pretending that it was the resistance that bombed the hospitals until it became so obvious, and when they started killing kids, infants in incubators, they just moved on. So I think the Western narrative won't have the impact that it did in the past. I think that the world has changed. If then the United States enters the battle, then I think that would be the end of the global economy. Very simple. I don't know when this will end and how this will end, but I know that the Iranians are going to hit the Israelis back hard.